Okay, fine. No, so let me just summarize. So yesterday we learned there's a concept that is a big machlekes in the Mishnah. There's a halach of kedima, which you'll see means two things. Number one, that if you're making a bracha, let's say by prayer eights, and you have a date and an apple, so you make the bracha on the date, because the choshev patters the ein choshev. Okay, so that's because in the date shivas aminim. That's one. That's when you're making the same bracha. When you're making two separate brachas, not necessarily. It doesn't work that way. You just make it's two different brachas. You're making a dama and eitz. Ula says that be'etzim not related. But the Gemara says afterwards, it's not so much. It's machlekes because there's also a din of kedima. That you always, there's rules of which bracha is made first. Whatever is listed in the shiur aminim goes first. And not only that, according to the order, it's listed. Chita, sa'ira, as we'll see in a moment in the Sugya more, Geffen, Te'ina, Rimoin. This is the order also that you have to make brachas. This is the chashivas of the peiros that Eretz Yisrael is praised for. These are the special peiros of Eretz Yisrael. So therefore, even if you have different brachas, so the fruits of Eretz Yisrael are always made first, or Mezainis always be first. Even if it's two different brachas, there's a rule of the order. Okay, now we're up to Upligi de Rabchanan. So again, how do we learn out the Kedima? Again, from the Pasuk. Eretz, Chita, Sa'oira, Gefer, Te'ena, Rimoin, Eretz Zai Shem Udvash. Upligi de Rabchanan. The Omer Rab Chanan Kapasa Kulo the Shiur Neman. So Rab Chanan has a completely different interpretation in this pasuk. He says it's l'shiurim. We're going to see in a minute. In other words, Rab Chanan learns that each thing mentioned in the pasuk is coming to allude. It's a remez. It's a remez to different shiurim, and more explains. Chita, go to the Shenema. Chita ditana and because the base of menuga. V'keila v'aksayfef. V'sadolo v'taboyis v'yila. The guy walks into a place which is tamei, which is tumas tzaras negoyim. So the loch is if you walk in, you become tamei. Hu v'hein tamei. Now he becomes tamei. How you love keila v'sadolo v'lan v'tavos v'taboyis. Now if he's carrying his clothing or whatever, his things, so they're also tamei. If he's wearing them, hu tamei miyad, v'hein tohayin. Now here's on salacha. Ad she'isha b'chdei achilas prat. So here, there's a certain amount of time that you need to be there that makes you tamei. What is that time? So the way Chazal gave that time was the time it takes to eat a achilas pras, a portion, which is like the amount of bread in a meal. Now there's different types of breads. It could take, 7 minutes to eat maybe a regular piece of bread, regular loaf of bread, half a loaf of bread. Or maybe it'll take 8 minutes to eat barley bread. It's really coarse. You have to chew it really hard. It takes longer, 9 minutes. Or maybe rye bread takes a while to eat. It's also more coarser. So this bread is pas chitin. Chitin is the highest quality bread. So v'lo pas sa'orin. Sorry, yeah, particularly pas chitin and not pas sa'orin. So here is so therefore the word chita is a remez to the shiur. Pas sa'orin. The amount of times it would take it to eat it with lifton, with some type of dip that you eat to dip the bread. Okay, that's number one. Number two, the second thing in the pasuk, sa'oira, barley. So what does barley have to do with shiurim? Etzem ki sa'oira, the bone is like how big is the bone? We're going to see. It says etzem kisoira mitame b'magam u'matzah mitam ba'oil. So a bone is mitama b'magam if you're touching it and carrying it, but not ba'oil. But how big a bone? Not a tiny little. It's the size of a piece of barley. And it's mitama. It's pretty small. It's the size of a barley. Geffen. What's the simon? Kedei revius. Yain the nozer. Geffen. It's now here. It's a little trickier. It's measured in revius. Revius is itself a shiur. Revius alone of wine. A nazir is not allowed to have a revius of wine. Not anyone, but if he's chayiv a korban if he drinks a revius of wine. But the revius of wine, a revius of how do we measure this revius in wine, dafka? Not a revius of water. There's a different, the volume. It's interesting. It's a little tricky concept. I think Taisus asked that. It's a little hard to understand. But the volume changes based on the material. Even though it's a revius, so why does the volume change? But it's like, there's a little more with the revius. It's a revius, so, but it has a little bit, it goes a little higher, so it's a little more. I think that's basically the idea. Rimoin, pomegranate. Kitnan koklei batim. Oh, sorry, I skipped something, sorry. Te'ena, figs. Kibgogeres. So we say Lohotzoy Shabbos. And the Mishnah Shabbos says that the amount, the size of the food, of any food that you take out, I think it's food dafka, food, is always, you're chayiv on Shabbos if you carry a shiur of a grogeres. Rimoin, not koklibatim, pomegranate. So we have a rule like this. It's not koklibatim shiurin kirimani. That anytime what is considered to be a kli, which is mekabel tumah, any kli, you know, right? You have a cup, a jug, whatever it is. So if it has a hole in it, it's a shvacha kli, right? Try to fill up water, water's coming out. So how big a hole does it have? It's not a kli. If it's the size that a pomegranate will come out, that's already not a kli. Eretz zayis shemen, oil. All Rav Moshe Binyomin Friedman. The general shiur for everything is the size of an olive, kizayis. Zok the Gemara kol shiur salta taitach. So what do you mean? Everything is kazayas? What? We just give you a whole list of rimain and te'ena and this. Don't tell me everything is kazayas. We see you sleeping there for the whole first part of the year, right? No, most things, most dinim are kazayas. You know, if you're eating achilas, you know, whatever, to eat something, tray 14, right? To eat shul, whatever, chayla, whatever it is, it's kazayas. Weiter. The next thing in the pasuk is dvash. Now, what's honey? Honey is dates, right? That's the date honey. So, what's the shiur dates? The amount that you eat on Yom Kippur that you're called your chayav kares on Yom Kippur is not inoi, is the amount eating the size of food, which is the size of a date, a big date. Oh, no, okay, so that's a pchana. But the Gemara before said, no, we need these shiurim to tell, we need these to tell me the order of the kedima. So either chani shiurim behedik. These are not anyways explicit shiurim in the Torah. They're all element rabbanon, across Machtor Alma. They're anyways all the rabbanon, and so we really need the pasuk to teach me kedima. That the Torah is teaching me. But nevertheless, the dinim, there's a smachta, there's a remez in the pasuk. Midrabanan, so everything's drabanan. So therefore, it doesn't bother me that the pasuk is used for that as well. Okay. They're having a meal. They brought tamarim, dates, reminding pomegranates, right? So everybody said, which bracha you make first? What do you guys say?
Dates.
What?
Dates.
Okay, good. Let's see. So let's see. You're right. But let's see why. Shakar Rav Nuna Baruch HaTamar. That's what he did. Like Moshe says on the date. Bereisha. Omar Reb Chisda, I don't understand. Do you learn the pasuk? So what's the pasuk, right? Remember, Eretz Kritos Ha'ira, Kefet Tein Arimain. Says pomegranate, and then Eretz says Shemin Dvash. Dvash is the last thing in the pasuk. Dates are dvash, right? That's the honey of the dates. But that's the last thing. So what's going on? So Teretz is as follows. Again, so let me read the pasuk one time, because if you look at the pasuk, it says as follows: Eretz. It's the land of Eretz Yisrael. Is wheat and barley and grapes and figs and pomegranates. Eretz. This is again Eretz Zayis Shem Dvash. So the pasuk is interesting. It makes like two categories here. It says there's Eretz Kitzur, and then there's Eretz Zay Shemin. There's Aleph and Vash. So because there's a double category here, so we look at it. So the Gemara, listen to the Gemara. It's going to say differently. The Gemara says, it's true. It's going to order, but overlay, it says Shegi La'aretz, it says Chabishi La'aretz. Yeah, but we start counting from the word Aretz. So the count starts again for the second Aretz. So in the second Aretz, Dvash is number 2. For the first Aretz, Rima is number 5. So therefore, in making a hierarchy, an order, so it comes out that Dvash comes before it, so dates come before Rima. It's before Shekimar. Zeshein La'aretz, Zechamishi La'aretz. Amalei Man Yoiv Nagri, the Paul's L'Mishmicha. He says, that's a good shot. Who's gonna take some metal, and we're gonna go serve you. Just saying, we're gonna go, we're gonna go serve you. He's saying a very good shot. Zakti more vital. This is very important Gemara. This tells us some very important rules about when we make brachos and not. If you lifnei te'inim va'anovim b'toich hasudeh, he brought te'inim va'anovim b'toich hasudah. So in other words, fruits in the middle of the meal. Amar Avun etzuna bracha lifnei vein tunim bracha la'achareyim. So Rav Huna says, tunim bracha lifneim ve'ein tunim bracha la'achareyim. So you make a bracha like we do. Right? What happens? You bring some apples to the meal. So what do? You make a bracha. Now you don't make a bracha achrayna because you get a bench afterwards, right? You make a bracha rishayna. You bring a fruit dessert to the meal. You make a bracha, but then afterwards you bench, right? No, Brachos says it says no. If it's a separate thing, it's a separate thing. So make a bracha now, make a bracha when you're finished. It's not connected to the meal. The general concept is, by the way, as we'll see in a minute, is when you bring dessert or fruits or something in the middle of the meal, this is not connected to the meal. It's not. The reason why when you have when you're eating salad with your meal, so you don't make a bracha on the salad, on the vegetables, because that's part of your meal. You're eating bread with the salad. It's the meal. You're eating, right? We're eating or dips with the bread. That's certainly part of the meal. And now even when you're eating. Even if you're eating, whatever it is, beans with the meal, that's part of the meal. You're eating potatoes with the meal. That's all part of your meal. So that doesn't get a bracha. But when you eat something which is not really meal related. It's sweet. It's like a dessert. It's not connected to meal. Then you need to make a bracha rishayna. So Rosh Yeshiva says you make a bracha also. We don't hold like that, but that's what he says. Because he says there's nothing. That's how it works. Whenever you make a bracha, you have to make a bracha afterwards. There's one exception, pasaba b'kistin, which is technically really what we call cake, more or less. Pasaba b'kistin literally means it has pockets and it has fillings in the pockets of sweet things. It has chocolate in the pocket or jelly in the pocket. Yeah, pasaba b'kistin pivad. So there you make a bracha rishayna, but you don't make a bracha acharayna because it's part of it's somewhat bread. So I'm learning. By the way, I'm explaining the Gemara according to Tosfos Pshat, not according to Rashi's Pshat. It's because the halacha is like Tosfos Pshat. Okay. Upligi de Rab Chia. To Amud Rab Chia pas pateres kol minim meichel. Now the apple comes mashkin. Now Rab Chia argues and he says that no, the bread does pater. Whenever he says even more. He says that you just make a bracha on bread and everything else is included. So that's the third sheet. Again, we don't pass like that. Amar Papa. This is the bottom line. Hilchasa dvarim haboyim machmas hasuda. So remember this terminology. Dvarim haboyim machmas hasuda. That's any type of food. Again, according to most Rishonim, that you eat as part of a meal. So certainly, everyone agrees, certainly if you a dip or something, right? You have hummus with your bread, so that's obviously, you don't make a bracha on it. But not only that, if you eat potatoes or beans, or for that matter, meat or chicken with your bread, it's part of the meat, it's part of your meal. Once it's part of your, or potato cooking, whatever, it doesn't matter. If it's something which goes with the meal, so that's dvarim haboyim machmas hasuda. That's because you're having a meal, you're eating it. And the b'teich hasuda ain't to the bracha lefneim lachrem. There's no brachas, you made a mitzi, that's it. Now, v'shaloi machmas hasuda. If it's something which is irrelevant to the meal, in other words, you're not eating, grapes in your meal because that's filling you up. You're eating it just because it's like a dessert. It's not part of the meal. It's not machmas hasuda, but since it is somewhat part of the meal, you're eating it in addition to the meal. So ein tuna brach lachreim, the birkas hamazon that you make afterwards will include those dessert items as well. It's not only fruit, by the way. It could be also dessert if you have chocolate mousse. It is. Now cake is a little bit more complicated, but yeah, many of us we also make a bracha on cake at the end of the meal. So some it depends on the cake and it's more complicated. Now, if it's after the meal, this is a different case which you don't really come to. That means there's a concept of I've completely finished my meal. I haven't yet made birkas hamazon, but the meal's completely finished. I've removed the table, everything's finished. We don't really have this in our today because we don't eat in the same style. But lachar suda, if it's completely after the meal, I'm disconnecting the meal to the bracha ben ifneim ben achrem, then in fact you will make a bracha. Okay, let's do one more piece here. Shala has been zayim b'nei ma abu dvarim b'chmas hasuda b'tei hasuda in the bracha b'nei l'achrem. Alei halei pas potato. Why is it that in fact, if you're eating potato cooked with meal, you don't make a bracha because the bread patas. It's part of the system of eating the bread. You're eating. As a person's main sustenance is supposed to come from bread, not from steak, right? So, if you're eating bread, so anything. Once you made a mitzi, that includes any other food item which is connected to the meal. So, in fact, the Gemara, if that's the case, then why is it if you're served wine? What's the halacha when you get wine during a meal? The halacha, you have to make a bracha, make a prepare goffer. Wine, you make a bracha always. So iyachi yain nami nifter pas. So why you have to make a bracha on the wine? So the answer is shani yain the goyim bracha la'atzmai. Yain is so important. There's so many halal things that won't, because it's wine, you can make other brachas. You make a bracha on wine, you pot everything else. Make a right. You make a bracha wine. You make a kiddush requires wine. Havdalah requires wine. It's a very important thing, and therefore you always need to make a bracha. Okay.